Okay, we're looking at the game Wolfpack, which appeared in Strategy and Tactics magazine, number 47. It was designed by James Dunnigan, the head of that company. James was also responsible for another title that I liked very much. He designed this one in 1972, The American Revolution, which I thought was a very innovative design. Now, Wolfpack itself was later reissued in a flat box game, so it must have been a successful design. Now, the unusual thing about Wolfpack, even for its time, it was designed from the ground up as a solitaire game. And we're going to take a look at this fascinating game on a topic that is not well studied in our hobby. Let's take a look. Now, the Battle of the Atlantic was one of the most important long-range and long-lasting battles in World War II. And I've always thought that it deserves a two-player treatment. And checking up on the games on Board Game Geek, this subject has hardly been touched at all, which is just an enigma to me. I don't understand. I'm thinking of taking on the subject myself because I think it does need a two-player game on this. But this solitaire game is very well done. You see before you more or less the map. Over to the left we have the east coast of Canada, rather, Newfoundland over here. Of course, the Atlantic itself. Up to the north we've got Greenland, over here Iceland, and the game stretches over to Great Britain, Ireland, and the western approaches. Since it is a solitaire game, all the charts are rendered up near the top. I'll show you that here, all facing the same direction. It's a fairly simple game, but a very good one. I'll just show you a few things about the game, how the convoys worked, how the air escorts worked, and it's got decent history. I think the research is very well done for a game on this subject. Let's take a closer look at the counters. Now, the counters that S&T was doing at the time were very minimalistic. They didn't have a lot of colors, and I thought that was just fine. The artist at the time was Redmond Simonson. He did the map also, and I always liked Redmond's work. There wasn't a lot of color, that just didn't matter. The main thing was getting the counters to be functional, and these were highly functional. One thing I liked about the game was they used the historical designations of the convoys. So the HX convoys here are Halifax convoys, and the SC convoys are Sydney convoys. And on the eastern side of the board, we've got the ONS convoys and the ON convoys. Various speeds. You can see that this is a slow convoy, speed of 4, and this one is a fast convoy, speed of 6. Same being true for the eastern convoys. For the air units, they were very simple but very effective. You simply had a silhouette of an airplane on it and the range. These are range 12, and there's a range 7. We're up in Iceland here. We have a long range airplane unit. In the middle here, we've got storm counters that move across the board, which makes it harder for U-boats to find convoys. And we've got Wolfpacks, rather. That's Wolfpack Kobold, Wolfpack Vorhut, Wolfpack Amsel. And each Wolfpack, with one pip on the counter, represents 6 U-boats. Now, the U-boats came in various sizes. You've got the 1, 2, 3, and 4 pip counters. Like I said, each pip represents 6 U-boats. And as you can see, when you gather 6 U-boats together, you actually get a combat advantage. That's because individual boats, and they are all named, you get all these really cool U-boats, with individual names. But when you put 6 U-boats together, you get a combat advantage of 1. So, same thing with 2 boat packs, 3 boat packs, and 24 boat packs. One thing I like about the hand-done maps of this period, they're not computer generated. You can actually see, if you look closely, the marks of the pen making slight mistakes on here. These are all hand-done maps, and I think they're really cool. That's the U-boats. And one of the big decisions the German player has in this, the human player plays the Germans, by the way. The system takes care of the convoys and the escorts. We'll get to that later. But one of the big decisions you have as the U-boat commander is, do you try to cover the Atlantic with individual boats, or do you form them into packs? Now, the disadvantage of having individual U-boats is, sure, you cover more territory, the chances of finding a convoy are much slimmer, and especially when it comes to an attack. To do an effective attack against a convoy at this scale, you really need a pack. So the human player has this big decision of spreading out and yet having to concentrate for an attack. That's one of the really essential points of the game. On top of all that, the submarine player has to try to sight the convoy, and after sighting it, you take the counter that's underneath the convoy, flip it over, and in this case we've got a real escort. So the escort EG7 is accompanying this convoy HX1, and if we attack it, we'll have much less chance of success, and we'll even have a chance of losing some U-boats. Let's say Wolfpack here, Hecht, detected this convoy, SC7. Well, you take the counter off in the bottom here. Oh, and it's another real escort. So this guy's going to have a heck of a time attacking that convoy. Now, somewhere along the line, I'm sure we'll run into one here. Let's see what happens with this particular U-boat pack encountering HX13. Same thing. Let's say he was successful in the search. We flip the counter, and lo and behold, it's a dummy unit. This convoy isn't even there. So this guy's wasted his time. Didn't sight anything. So you've got this little cat and mouse game as the convoys hide from the submarines, and the submarines have to try to track them down. Also, there's all kinds of special rules for when a submarine is sighted. They're kind of cute. I love the counters in this game. Like I said, they're very minimalistic, but they're really, really neat. Let's say during the course of the game, some air units from, let's say, Iceland sight this U-boat. Well, you put a little wee sighting counter on the U-boat, and when the convoy moves, it moves around the U-boat, diverting and going around it. So there's all kinds of really neat historical rules for simulating convoy versus submarine search and destroy missions. And, as I mentioned, the air units have various distances. Iceland has a range here of 16, and it's got some 12s and a 7. And Redmond Simonson has placed right on the map the distances that can be covered by the air units. Anyone who's studied the Battle of the Atlantic knows that the air units were decisive in defeating the U-boats. Over here on the south part of the map, you've got the tonnage chart. A neat little symbol of a ship sinking. So as the U-boats sink ships, you move these markers to show the tonnage. They're in 5,000 ton increments. And of course, the more tonnage you sink, the better chance you have of victory. There's all kinds of rules for weather and fog. And for example, if it's a fog turn, there'll be a much less chance of finding a convoy. Also, as I mentioned before, you've got these storm counters that are formed at various times in the game, and they move across the board at intervals. And if a convoy is in a storm, normally that's not too good for the convoy. It's got to slow down and stuff, but it's almost impossible to detect a convoy in a storm. So storms actually aid the convoys. So this is a really good game. It's a lot of fun. It's frustrating as the U-boat commander, but that's probably what Donuts faced. Just trying to find these convoys in the vastness of the North Atlantic is a challenge in itself. Now those fog rules I mentioned, they mainly affect over here, Newfoundland. You can see that some of the hexes here are different. That indicates fog, and any convoys located in fog areas are going to be very difficult to find. Now I know that says abbreviated sequence of play, but it's a very detailed one. If you just follow this sequence of play, just do what it says in the sequence of play, and you'll have the game down pat. There's only about 12 pages of rules, and it's a very easy game to learn. There's just about every single table you can think of in this game. You've got a special table for the storm and convoy movement. You've got the fog and storm formation. You've got a whole table for air search. That's air units trying to find submarines. And then you've got submarine search. That's the naval escorts who happen to be with those convoys searching for subs. And you've got the picket search, which is the U-boats searching for convoys. You've got the possibility of a convoy straggling, because a straggled convoy is going to be a lot easier to pick apart than one that's kept its cohesion. Of course, you've got the anti-submarine combat attack table. That's when the escorts counterattack the subs. And of course, you've got this initial setup, so each game will be quite different. You won't know where the convoy's set up. And of course, prior to setting up the game, you're going to be putting these dummy counters upside down underneath the convoys, so you yourself will not know which convoys have real units and which convoys have dummy units. Now there's several scenarios right here. That's your setups, telling you how many U-boats are on the board, how many convoys, and how many dummy counters are on the board, and the air assets allocated for each scenario. I like the game so much that I actually kind of wore out some of my counters and got a spare set. That's the counter mix you get with the game. Now in those days, most SPI games were using base 6 die rolls, but Wolfpack used base 9, and the game didn't come with a 9-sided dice, so you're supposed to use these little randomizers. But I find if you just use a 10-sided dice, the game plays a lot faster. So if you ever do get the game, I'd recommend using a 10-sided dice. Well, there's not much more I can say about Wolfpack, except that it's about the only game out there covering the whole strategic war in the Atlantic, submarines versus convoys. And until something comes along, it's, for me, kind of the definitive game, as old as it is, 1975. Can't believe that that many years has gone by and the subject just hasn't been tackled. Now, the few times it has been tackled, I've noticed a few games on Board Game Geek in the past. I think Taurus Games did a Wolfpack game, and it also was solitaire. So I guess people are thinking, well, I guess all the fun is in taking the submarines and just let the AI do the convoys. But I disagree. I think there's much more to moving convoys and diverting them than what an AI has to offer. So, I don't know, maybe that's going to be my next project. But anyway, that's it for Wolfpack. I think it's a real good game, and thank you for watching.